about this New York Times because there's a story that the New York Times buried and refused to talk about a particular issue, and that is in relation to Mr. Justice Kavanaugh, the Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Now, shouldn't a commission, if we're going to do this business with Donald Trump, be empanelled to investigate what led to the assassination attempt on Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and why was this covered up? So what's the background of this, Peggy?
Well, you talk about the New York Times burying this. Really, not one major media outlet has been covering this. And unfortunately, this is the natural progression that we get. When they turn a blind eye to doxing, which is the practice of releasing public figures' private, personal home information, phone numbers, addresses, things like that. So they've been doxing these conservative justices. They've been allowing protests and mobs to gather outside their houses, and that's illegal. They're not allowed to gather for the purposes of influencing a case that's pending before the court. And so we don't need a commission. We need for this White House and this Department of Justice to go and arrest those people who are breaking the law. When you allow the protesting, when you allow the doxing, and you don't call it out, condemn it, or hold them accountable, then unfortunately, this is the natural progression of events. We know that it would be covered very differently if it was a liberal justice that had been maybe, gone after by a conservative activist. But we know that there's two tiers of justice, and we're seeing it play out right now.
This 26-year-old Nicholas Roski has been arrested near Kavanaugh's home. He allegedly arrived in a cab at 1 a.m. carrying a rucksack, quote, full of burglary tools. He then recognised US Marshals surveilling the residence of the Supreme Court Justice and turned himself in. But he did tell law enforcement authorities he, quote, intended to kill Kavanaugh. Now, Peggy, is this related to Democrat Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, in relation to the Roe v. Wade case and the likelihood of overturning Roe v. Wade, which you and I have talked about, and returning abortion regulation to the states? And Schumer pledged publicly that Kavanaugh, amongst others, would pay the price. Now, critics say that Schumer has really inspired this kind of response.
He has, and we were just talking about Donald Trump being accused of inciting violence. Trump talked about peacefully and patriotically going to the Capitol to make your voices heard. What Schumer did was overtly and intentionally inciting violence. And I would also add to that Maxine Waters, who said, you get in the faces of these people who work for Trump. You go up to them at the grocery store, at their home, where they shop, at the gas station. And so these are overt, violent accusations and threats. And so it's no wonder that the people who follow this leadership are going to take it to the next step. This leadership should be calling that out. They should be putting an end to it immediately. It shouldn't matter whether it's a conservative or a liberal justice. They should be allowed to do their job, and they should be protected in doing it, and especially their children. This should not be allowed to stand. This White House needs to stop it and condemn it.
Well, the Republicans are saying that Justice, there is a House committee, as we've talked about, investigating the Capitol riot. A congressional commission should be impaneled to investigate what led to this assassination attempt on Mr. Justice Kavanaugh. I mean, Roski told police he wanted to, quote, give his life purpose by killing Kavanaugh. Now, Peggy, the argument is that left-wing lawmakers routinely compare conservatives to Adolf Hitler, prompting one commentator to say that in the suspect's mind, he probably thought he was literally killing a modern-day National Socialist dictator. Others are saying the New York Times buried the Kavanaugh assassination story because Kavanaugh is a conservative. Peggy, what conclusions do we draw from both these stories?
Well, unfortunately, by the mainstream media and by the leadership on the left and out of this White House, by their silence, they are telling us that they actually condone this type of behavior. And so the people that follow them are going to continue to be increasingly violent and threatening toward conservatives of all kinds. And it really needs to come to a stop. It's gone too far, but this is the natural progression when you don't stop it, and when the leadership is either condoning it or by their silence, they're condoning it as well.